Yeah, actually, I have the control flow graph here, and it actually comes from actually Rust. So we build this control flow graph where you have jumps, blocks. I don't know, you might have also a try catch. So and you see how it gets updated. You essentially see the flow of the information inside this code.
That visualizer is beautiful. I am immediately desiring that for work on ESLint and TypeScript ESLint. But you bring up something interesting here. You've got React-specific rules, but Biome is not itself a React-specific project. Do you foresee splitting out React and plug in alongside, say, Solid, Preact, and so on at some future point?
Actually, I think we're gonna. I think with a different approach. Someone, next colleague, proposed having inside the configuration something like frameworks or libraries. So you put like in your framework, you put all the libraries that your project uses, and Biome automatically recommends you all the rules for those libraries. So if you use React, it's going to recommend you all the rules around JSX and React.
That's another thing that sounds like it would be incredibly useful. One of the big benefits of the ESLint ecosystem has been having all those different frameworks, but one of the drawbacks then is you have to choose which, ESLint plugin React hooks, Solid, and so on. You gotta choose for your project.
Biome is a project with a pretty inspiring backstory. It started as a fork of Babel by the creator of Babel, and then a company was formed around it. So that was Biome JS, and it was eventually rewritten in Rust, and then there was like a whole team that worked on that. And later on, the company ran out of money, but Emma, one of the members of the team, just kept working on it out of pure passion. Even though he had recently lost his job at this company, he just kept going and recently resurrected it as Biome JS. So he has a lot of interesting things to say on the topic, as you might imagine. And we're also lucky to have Josh Goldberg on this call. Josh is a maintainer on TypeScript ESLint, as well as Ian from Michigan TypeScript. Ian used to be on the ESLint core team. So this is a great group of people to be talking about this stuff. We really hope you enjoy it. Let us know, seriously, let us know what you think about all of this stuff and what other types of authors and projects you'd like to hear next. You can tell us in the comments below, or you can come on the Michigan TypeScript Discord and let us know. Thanks. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to Michigan TypeScript's Let's Code series. We're excited today to be talking with the creator of the Biome JS project, the lead maintainer. A little bit of info about us as far as Michigan TypeScript. We're a group of serious TypeScript developers and those who are learning about TypeScript and wanting to sort of improve. We're based here in Michigan, but we have members all over the world. And the Let's Code series is where we talk to popular open source maintainers and really dig into what it's like to maintain those projects, sort of try to get a day in the life and some insights into what it takes to maintain an open source project in this day and age. So with that, my name is Ian. I am a front-end developer. I'm a core team member of the Storybook project. Back in the day, I was involved in ESLint back around their like 1.0 timeframe. And I work at a small software startup called Defined Networking. And my co-host here with me today, I'm super excited to have Josh Goldberg, the lead maintainer of TypeScript ESLint. Do you want to say hi, Josh?
I want to say hi, and also I'm one of the maintainers before one of the other ones flies over from Australia and hits me over that statement. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here. I've been in Michigan maybe twice in my life, so real excited for the virtual stuff. I work on a bunch of open source TypeScript area stuff, such as TypeScript ESLint, also create TypeScript app, and the soon to be renamed TypeStat project. Real excited to talk about Biome and where all this tooling stuff is going. I think it's really exciting.
Awesome. Thanks. And yeah, our guest of honor today is Emma from Biome JS. It's a Rust-based it's a tool for linting and formatting your projects, your JavaScript, TypeScript projects. But Emma, can you introduce yourself and give us a little bit of history about the project you're working on and what it does, and so if people aren't familiar with it?
Yeah. So my name is Emanuele. You can call me Emma. It's my short version. I'm currently employed in the Astro technology company, and I'm an open source enthusiast. I work every day at Astro, so I work in 2 different open source projects that are quite. Well, Astro is bigger than Biome, but I'm excited as much as as Biome as Astro. Previously, I worked as a front-end developer. I worked with TypeScript for like 4 or 5 years. So I'm not as skilled as a lot of people on the open source ecosystem, but like I try my best. Yeah. So Biome is, as you explained, it tries to be a one-shot tool that wants to actually take care of your project. So lint in it, format, and in the future maybe compile it, bundling, and the idea was also having also like a test runner, documentation generation, project maintenance. Checking your dependencies, your package JSON, and try to make sure that your exports are all correct. So all this kind of stuff, and tries to do it in a really high quality way. So with a meaningful diagnostics, trying to give a hint and help to the user. Here's your error. Here's how you can fix it. Here's your error. That's maybe the reason why you have this error. So all this kind of stuff. It has to, and it wants to work also out of the box with the IDEs. So having first class support for the LSP.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think tooling overload is definitely a thing in the JavaScript ecosystem. So having one tool that you can install to take care of all of that for you, I think it's quite the value proposition for a lot of people, I think. So that's amazing. I think a lot of people may also be familiar with the project this grew out of, which was Rome. And I think maybe you can talk a little bit about sort of what it was like to transition from working on Rome to now sort of the official fork of Rome of Biome.
Yeah, so initially Rome was born from Sebastian McKenzie. It was his pet project. No, actually pet, but he worked on that project for a long time. Internally, it was a fork of Babel, and it had on top of that a lot of features. So there was a lot. So Rome was actually big when it was written in TypeScript. It had a lot of features, a really good CLI, no dependencies whatsoever. So that was the actual mission, to try to be a self-contained ecosystem. It was also a bundler. It was able to compile itself. So it was a self-host compiler. It was actually neat, like something that you don't see every day in a JavaScript project. So I joined when it was launched. So previously I worked in the Webpack ecosystem. I was part of the Webpack CLI, so I was already an enthusiast in terms of parsing, compiling, all this kind of stuff, and also the CLI itself. So when I left the project, I wanted to cultivate these passions, and that's where Rome, a new launched open source project, was a good fit. Let's see what I can do. Then we know a little bit of the story. So Sebastian seeked some funding, basic funding. He got some money, and I wanted to join in. It was if I don't do this now, I can't do it anymore. I still have the energies, to pursue it. And if it doesn't go well, I might find something else quite soon. So here in Ireland, fortunately, the job market is quite good. So let's do it. And that's when I started working as a full-time developer tools developer, to Rome. And that's when we decided to change everything, abandon TypeScript, and make it in Rust. So it was a big decision. So some people didn't agree with that, some other did, but that's the direction of that the company took at that time. And that was good. I mean, I learned a new language, a system language. I don't know much about system languages, C or other strongly typed languages. I learned Java back in college, so that was the top of my experience. TypeScript, yes, it's typed, but it's also a bit of dynamic, when you have to define all these types in order to give type safety. So Rust is really strict. It's really sound typed language. So it was nice, a good experience. And so that's one of the reasons why I keep working on Biome, because I like Rust. I love it as a language. I fell in love with it. And yeah, so after the company was created, we worked on it for like a year and a half. We hired the new people, really skilled developers. I learned a lot from them. They were really, really good. And eventually, the company didn't have any more money, so all the employees were let go December of last year. And fortunately, even though I was removed from the organization, for some reason, I still had some publishing rights in the repository. So let's continue. I mean, Sebastian is not available; he's in his own issues, but still, it's still an open source project. You can still going. So I continued out of passion, essentially. Even though I was scarred by the bad experience, I had to recover a bit. Fortunately, it was under the holidays, so I could go. I did something else with my wife, with my family, so I could focus on other important things. And then after I came back recharged, I decided to continue, and some other people joined the adventure and continued the adventure. And eventually I decided to, not just me, because there's a team behind, but essentially that was my idea. We can keep the Rome brand for many reasons that some of them are in the blog post, but we can discuss also about those. And this is essentially what's part of being an open source maintainer.
You've touched on a lot of great things there. And I find it interesting that this is a really good example of one of the value props of open source, that if a project were to, let's say, run out of funding and need to stop active development, you can actively fork it. Do you see any other particular advantages that have come out of this being a very in the open, public, open source project like that?
Well, in my case, it's been really good, because Rome comes from a lot of history. It was born as under the Facebook umbrella, open source umbrella. Then it got out. Then it was under a private company. Also, there's this personal issue with the company. So there's a I call it baggage from my point of view. Okay, so there's a lot of history, and doing the fork was a liberatory action where, okay, Rome is gone. I don't want to hear anything about it. It's a clean slate, and so it had, and also there's this symbolic gesture, and as a second factor, there's the fact that we did have all the rights to actually continue and nurture the community that was born around Rome. The Discord server, nobody had, other than myself, the moderation rights to actually moderate all the channels and things like that. So it was just me, and I didn't have the energy to do everything myself. So I wanted to delegate to the other members of the core team, and I couldn't. And Discord is actually quite important to us because it allows a direct communication among the community, among the members of the community, a quick feedback, for people that are seeking help. And then also like website, npm registry, all these important things that we needed, we couldn't manage. So it was bound to happen. People also asked if we could, create a new organization under keeping the Rome brand, the Rome name. But that was really difficult. Like Sebastian had created a lot of websites, GitHub organizations, and open collectives that reminded the Rome brand. So it was actually really impossible to find a combination that suited the situation. So once we decided that, I think in less than 2 weeks, we did the whole thing. So finding a logo, try to some color, setting up the fork, website, everything. I had this burst of energy, of adrenaline, where it's okay, I want to do it. So and then I feel better, now still I think it's in motion, but now I can enjoy a little bit more the fact that I'm working on something, that I created and we created together with the other members. And the reception was actually really positive, and I didn't expect that. Also, the magnitude of the reception was actually way bigger than expected, to be honest. So, and yeah, it's the community. This really positive way of feedback was really good, and I think I made the right choice. We made the right choice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'm glad that it gets to live on as a new project and we can continue using it. You mentioned a couple of things there. You mentioned Discord and sort of building a community. And I think that's something that's been interesting to sort of watch play out in Storybook as well. And kind of the tension between having something like that to be able to give people that immediate feedback and answer their questions right away and have that engagement. And I think that is super useful. I think some of the downsides that we've seen is searching is a little bit tough there. People can't Google for an answer and find it in the Discord, things like that, right? How do you think about that sort of tension between the openness of something like GitHub issues or discussions versus the immediacy of Discord, and maybe both of them have their place, or how do you balance those?
Yeah, it's really difficult to balance. Discord is a closed source software, and as you said, it's really difficult to search things. But also I think Discord is a way to get out of the seriousness of the software. You can also have some place where you can just chat with memes and chat about something else that is not related to the project. It's also a way to know the community from a different point of view, so make jokes and also discuss about other things like programming and anything else. So I think it's also part of nurturing a community, to not get ourselves too serious. So to try to be, to joke, we're still humans, we don't need to be all dark and always thinking about programming. We just, have a laugh, oh, I see this meme, and just share it with your team, or I want to share this opinion with someone else. I mean, if we able to create a community where you're safe and you can express your opinion without having a negative feedback, I think it's also part of the open source software. So also the human side. And yeah, and also GitHub, it's also another important part. And yeah, that's essentially, RFCs, discussion details. That's the part where you wanna, okay, now I'm gonna have half hour where I write my RFC, review it with calm, without any pressure to reply to the other person. It's two different kind of feedbacks. They are both important, and it's difficult to find the right balance, but I think both are part of the same, two sides of the same coin.
Do you have a joke for us?
Oh my God! Well,
shut
up and take my money. Like, I'm really into like Futurama and Rick and Morty, you know. So I started to put like memes about Futurama and Rick and Morty. So
speaking of balance and sort of finding a time and about Discord and GitHub, how have you found the support load to be for the project so far? How do you balance your time between maintaining and the actual development of your project versus answering questions and responding to comments and questions on GitHub?
Well, I think I have to lead by example, and I think eventually, if you see the core team supporting new users, eventually also the more seasoned users will start helping, and I start seeing this trend now. So I always try to go into the support chat on Discord and try to give some feedback, help. And I'm glad that sometime I see that there are other users that already replied or try to help. I also like this trend on Astro. They try to also to reward users, like giving some roles, giving some acknowledgement, and it seems to be working. And I want to try to bring also this to our Discord server and see how it goes. I'm also like trying to I take like a example from different servers, to see how the more seasoned communities like Barn, for example, or Nux.js. So their servers are quite big and they have a lot of users. So I try to see how they do, and if it works, so probably we should do it as well. But yeah, I try to lead by example and try to, I try to reply to these support questions when like late at night or early in the morning, they don't require a lot of work mentally from my point of view. So, and then it's just coding. But now, like, I'm not coding that much because there's a lot of going on in the project. So like governance and leadership and things like that. So it's also important.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about that, sort of how you find time to manage a large project like this, as well as, working for Astro and the rest of your life, right? Like how do you find balance between coding and maintaining the project and the rest of everything that you have going on?
It's difficult. Like I need to, what's difficult is actually to turn off my head. Like, my head is always like checking GitHub, checking Discord for these kind of things. So actually the hard part is like to be present in real life, friends and family, and also like, managing a house, bills, errands. So that is the kind of stuff that sometimes is difficult as a programmer. So we need to learn how to turn off our head. So that's, I think, this is the most challenging part. Like some time ago, I had to take a day off because like between Astro and Biome, it took a lot of energy. So I took a day off, like no coding at all, just went outside, went to a nice place with my wife and just enjoyed nature, pictures, experiences. So that's the thing that we have to do quite strictly. Otherwise, we actually burn out. And then, I don't know, it comes natural. Like I managed to support Astro and make things for Astro as well as Biome. Fortunately, I'm quite fast at coding. So when I don't work for Astro, if I have 10 minutes, 15 minutes for Biome, I just jump to the Discord server on the GitHub and just do a PR review, reply to questions. So sometimes I manage. But yeah, I mean, it happens that overwork, I do Biome, so even though I work 7 hours a day, then there's also 2 or 3 hours of this open source project. So it's a lot of time, yeah. But I don't have kids, so that's where also I found the time, and so.
Josh, do you have any tips or thoughts on work-life balance when you're maintaining a large project? I know you have a lot of experience there too.
I don't have any questions here, but I do want to shout out something you said earlier around safety. I think a lot of what you've described around creating a supportive, positive environment and having good work-life balance go really well together. If people have that psychological safety to be comfortable posting, saying memes, making jokes, that lends itself really well to people feeling comfortable having positive discussions and taking in feedback. I'm curious if you've had any particular aha moments that have been suggested or iterated on with the community, types of things that you think have really pushed the project forward.
To be honest, no. I mean, it's quite new, so I haven't still set up the mode in the Discord. I haven't figured it out yet. So if you have any suggestions, that would be welcome.
I think that Astro is an excellent template to use, or I refer back to their Discord a lot in terms of just how does a community work that's doing it really well, that does a great job of engaging the community and like you said, giving roles or sort of recognition to the people who are jumping in and helping out. And I've been really impressed with the job that Astro does there, and tried to mimic that in other environments that I'm in. Jumping back to something you had talked about earlier and the transition between TypeScript to Rust, I'd like to sort of ask a little bit more about that. Rust has gotten a lot more popular recently. It seems like kind of a lot of projects are heading in that direction. How was it for you learning Rust and sort of being a part of that move from TypeScript to Rust? And were there specific incompatibilities that you had to kind of work through, or tool chain issues, or just for anyone else that's sort of thinking about maybe it's time to start learning Rust? Do you have any tips or suggestions?
Yeah. So first, the first thing you do if you want to learn Rust is reading the book. So they have a public book, the Rust book is called, and it's really well written for beginners. So you start from there. And then they have this repository called rustlings, which essentially is exercises. So you start compiling the project, and there are 60 to 70 exercises that cover essentially the book. So if you struggle with the first exercise, you ask for a tip, and they give you a tip, and also they send you to the relative chapter in the book. Yeah, so essentially it's a repository. You just check it out. Well, actually, you can also install it as a binary. And then, yeah, you start it. That's how you do. You do the rustling watch. You have the nice CLI and with exercises. You have a bunch of files that don't compile, actually. Maybe, yeah. So essentially, you have a bunch of files that don't compile, and you have to make them compile. And if you compile, if compiles, essentially, your exercises is done, and that's how it works. So you have to fight. Well, yeah. Initially, you have to fight the compiler and make it happy. If you make it happy, you pass the exercises, and you go to the next one.
That sounds very similar to the TypeScript type challenges, where there's some exercise that you're supposed to complete and make some tests pass. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, Michigan TypeScript recorded solutions to every type challenge that there is. There's a I don't know how many there are, 140, 150 of these. And you can find our playlist and go through and watch those if you are interested. So that little bit of self-promotion over. Is there anything else that sort of was surprising to you when working with Rust or when learning Rust that you think would be useful for others to know about if they're getting started?
Yeah, but initially, as I come from a TypeScript / JavaScript, like you want to actually write dynamic code. Like it's in your blood, So and there's nothing wrong. Thing is, if you try, you make things more difficult for yourself because you actually go like in a really non-beginner friendly area of Rust. Like you can make things dynamic, but it requires some expertise in the type system of Rust. So, but I still remember when I wanted to try to port part of the ROM's TypeScript logic into Rust, and it worked. It actually worked, but after a few months, I came back and I was like, what the hell did I write? Like, this is not like, they call it idiomatic, a Rust idiomatic. So it's not like something that you would write in a simple Rust. So we just removed it and wrote it from scratch. But I think it's fine, it's just a transition because you move from a way of coding to a different one, and it's like learning a language. When you learn a new language, you actually translate from your mother language to use it's just a literal translation, but you at the end, when you learn, you find out that that's not how the native people would say that phrase, or that sentence. And you understand it. People also understand you. The native people, they might not complain. So the Rust compiler doesn't complain. But eventually you come back and you think, maybe I should say this phrase in a different way. So there are some similarities, and it's all fine. It's part of the learning process. So if you happen to write some dynamic Rust, things like that, it's fine. It's fine. With the time, you learn.
Yeah, there are sort of transitory or beginner area timeline challenges to moving to a new language, such as you described, the learning process. But then there are larger ecosystem difficulties of switching over. For example, a lot of your potential contributors might have been fluent in TypeScript, the way I am, and might be not so fluent in Rust, the way I unfortunately am. Have you had any challenges around trying to deal with that different contributor or limited contributor pool?
Yeah, like in the Biome ecosystem, like it's quite difficult to find contributors because language is actually can be a barrier. Like the contributions compared to how it was when Rome was in TypeScript are like really, really the difference is a lot. Like previously, the number of contributions were really high because TypeScript is quite popular, is very similar to JavaScript. It's a easy language to learn. So, and I mean, JavaScript is the most used language of all of them. So it's a fact. So the pool of contributors is like mathematically bigger than the Rust one. And also there's the fact that we are writing a tool for JavaScript in Rust. We are not writing a tool from Rust to Rust. So there's this, this thing that doesn't work very well, So it's actually difficult to find the right combination, of a developer that likes the web and wants to learn Rust. Fortunately, there's a trend now, now all the cool tools are moving there. You have a TurboPack, you have SWC. Well, there's also ESLint, which is on Go. So there's people that wants to learn Go. Is there some other tool in Rust? Yeah, there's Lightning CSS. There's also some part of Parcel. So there's a trend, so maybe we're gonna find more hands to help us. But yeah, it hasn't been easy. So essentially, sometime I just open PR, I review it myself, and I just merge it because it's quite difficult.
That makes sense. Yeah, talking about all the tools going to Rust, I think that the elephant in the room maybe is ESLint, right? And their sort of planned migration to Rust. One thing I wanted to ask about is sort of like what it's like building a tool in kind of an ecosystem that's dominated right now by kind of a legacy tool like ESLint or Prettier for the formatting side. Can you talk a little bit about sort of like what it's like just psychologically to sort of like build a new tool that is replacing things that people have a lot of familiarity with already?
Well, initially, like you have a lot of users that have a lot of expectations, like not just creating custom rules, but like also the way ESLint works, they expect to have the same way of working this new tool. And that's something that, a lot of users are quite, they arrive at Biome, see something different. They are not accustomed. So they try, what's the I have this rule. How is it the rule there in Biome, because we also have a different naming convention. So that's the first thing. But we're working on that. So like as a Victorian is working on like creating a guide, okay, if you come from ESLint, these are the rules that you want to use in Biome. So like a table where we translate one rule from another. And also like the number of rules, like ESLint has a hundreds and hundreds of rules. We have just like 150 or something. So it's essentially building an archive. So we have to essentially beef up the tool in order to provide the same experience. But we are not there yet, and that's a fact. Like you have a TypeScript ESLint that is baked. It has TypeScript baked in its core, and it provides rules that yet we can't provide. So rules that leverage the type system. And these are really important. We had users that requested them, and unfortunately we have to deny the desire to have these rules because at the moment we don't have the infrastructure to provide them. So it's essentially a step back. So objectively, so I'm aware of that. And so like if you want to use Biome, but you rely on these rules, you have two choices. You use both tools or you keep TypeScript. So TypeScript ESLint. So don't be too rushy. Like don't go ahead and use the hype. So try to be mindful. Try to understand if Biome is able to provide the same user experience as ESLint and TypeScript ESLint.
Yeah, it's fascinating because just looking through your site, I love the way you output the suggestions, the fixes, the lint complaints, with little color syntax highlighting the green with this, even showing what oh my God, beautiful. But as you just said, feature gap. From my perspective as someone who works on TypeScript ESLint, it would be lovely to have that stuff for us. And actually, could you pull up, do you have an example, like your favorite lint rule we could see the complaints from? I really want to show how beautiful your output is.
Okay, so I should have something. Okay. Let's see. So this is the code base. So you want to see some color, right? Okay, so let's do it like at this time. So I have this file. I'm gonna just write something that is not right. Okay, actually, like -0. Okay, now run the CLI. So I'm gonna just run the dev CLI. Okay, we just do the lint and test this. So I'm not in the right folder. Just a second. Okay.
Sorry, what editor is this?
Yeah, I was curious as well.
So this is a CLion, okay, IntelliJ CLion, and I'm in this mode called presentation mode. So it makes things like bigger and less. It shows less stuff, So I use CLion for my development. You can also use like VS Code with Rust Analyzer, but I love IntelliJ IDEs. So, all right. So here's the diagnostics that you requested. So you can see you have the name of the file, line and row, the name of the rule. It tells you that this is a fixable diagnostic, and yeah, this is one of the reasons why I fell in love with Rome. Like this really nice, colorful diagnostics. Yeah.
Beautiful. And from what I understand, this is one of the big value props a lot of people have mentioned with Rust. Although it is so strict, people still get similar looking kinds of outputs from the type checker, the compiler that can help you a lot. But yeah, you mentioned also TypeScript support. So for context, the TypeScript type system has not been implemented in a language such as Rust that has Rust level speeds or lower level speeds. So from my perspective, you could say, do that, use a project like STC, which is not yet ready, or you could slow down and call to the JavaScript speed TypeScript type checker, or you could just wait. Do you have any particular plans or hopes for where you might take this?
Well, we actually talked about it when we were at Rome Tools Inc. We actually wanted to use TSC directly. So we wanted to try to actually use TSC as a service and extract the information from the compiler, translate them into a Rusty data structure, and try to map, the information inside our EST. But this is something that we haven't managed to do. Something that we wanted to do this year, but unfortunately we couldn't. So to be honest, I think this is the fastest way, try to leverage the tools that we already have, because TypeScript actually, it does have a spec. So the spec is actually the checker.ts, which is a 2 megs file. So you have to go there and try to understand what the compiler does. So like doing harakiri. Or just, building it yourself, which is another harakiri choice. So I don't have a quite clear answer for you. So
it's one of the exciting parts about working in dev tooling. Yay! This also brings up, I think, an interesting point about how JavaScript web ecosystem tooling is shaped. That traditionally we've sort of fluctuated, I think, between having really big projects that do a lot for you and smaller projects that adhere to do one thing kind of principles. Now we're starting to see that pendulum swing towards projects like this one and Bun and so on. Do you see yourself continuing to do more and more over time, or do you see this starting to pull in other projects or some kind of combination, perhaps?
Yeah, I think both. I think I want to partner with another small tool to actually leverage what they're doing and bring it to Biome. I think collaboration is also a key to grow, even though we want to build a whole ecosystem, but still I think the collaboration with other projects is important. So I think it's something that I want to promote, see what the other members of the core team think. For example, something that we want to do is try to resolve dependencies, dependency graph, ESM, CJS. So all these things, it's actually something quite complex, really difficult to get it right. lot of tools are trying to do that, but there's always some edge case that maybe Vite doesn't get right or ESBuild doesn't get right. So it's quite tricky. And I mean, why doing again all the work if another tool has done it? We can partner up and see. And I don't know, maybe have this tool shared in a shared organization, try to help each other, and in turn we can, I don't know, make more APIs for the other tool in order to leverage, I don't know, our EST or formatter. I think it is also important. It's like I don't want to, even though like the tool wants to be an ecosystem, a sole ecosystem, does have to reflect on the community and how we partner with projects. Actually, it has to be the opposite, okay? So I think that's the message we should start spreading and broadcast to the community. I think Rome in the past, some people thought it was like a pretentious, oh, you want to do everything to yourself, but no, it doesn't have to be like that. It's actually, the fact that a tool wants to be everything itself is actually a technical thing, not it's just that. There's no other reason. I did a talk at JS Nation and explained why having a tool that does everything can have these advantages as opposed to having different tools that do different things, Giving another example, if you go into the Rust ecosystem, you have this tool called Cargo. Cargo essentially is a CLI that does compiles your code, formats your code, lints your code, resolves all the dependencies and circular dependencies, everything with just one CLI. And it tests your code. So, but underneath Cargo, you actually have different tools like Clippy. Clippy is the tool that actually lints your code. You have Rust Format, which is actually the tool that formats your code. Then you have the test runner, which is built into Cargo. And you have the actual compiler, which is actually Rust C. So on the surface, it seems to be like one tool that does everything, but then you have different tools below. The point I think technically is that if you have one AST, so you parse one single file and then the result of the parsing is actually shared among all these tools, you actually gain a lot of speed because you just do it once, and that's it. And the parsing can be actually quite expensive sometimes. So that's one of the technical reasons. But yeah, going back to your questions, yeah, I think we want to partner with other tools in the future.
Yeah, that makes great sense. I think that's one of the reasons Vite has sort of taken off and become popular as it has, is it uses some of the existing tooling that's out there, like Rollup and ESBuild and things like that. But you don't really know you're working with those necessarily when you're interacting with Vite. It sort of wraps all those, and that makes a lot of sense. One thing I wanted to ask about, you talked about sort of adding new features and expanding the project, growing what it can do. How do you think about sort of making decisions on whether to add a feature, whether to accept a PR, whether to grow the API, add a rule, add an option to a rule, all of those kind of questions that come up when you're doing as much as you are. How do you go through the process of deciding whether to say no to something?
I think it's about pros and cons and being open-minded. So try to see the things from an objective point of view. So no strings attached, no hard feelings, So let's see if technically it makes sense. So if it makes sense for the user, if you have a real use cases, if something drops the performance of the tool. So there are a lot of things that you have to take into account. And yeah, you need to get attached to, I don't know, like, oh, I made this rule, so it has to be like that. No, like, okay, you did it, but like no feelings, it's just coding, and you're trying to build a tool for other users. And maybe these users have different needs compared to yours. So that's essentially my process. Like, for example, now we are trying to review how to we create a change log without asking too much from the users. We try to initially we require the user to add a changelog line, but this is quite hostile to the new contributors, because they just want to have a fix, they want to have a new feature. They don't speak English very well, so it's user hostile. So we want to try to remove this practice. But on the other hand, we want to give credits. We want to provide as much info as possible in the changelog. So it's quite difficult. So personally, I like for a user to add a changelog line, but I also respect the fact that it's a user hostile. So, okay, that's my opinion, but objectively, it's a user hostile. So I'll let it go and let's move on. So although it's something that you build over time, like I have a lot of experience. I've been open source for a long time, but I know in the beginning, when you're young enthusiast, you also have all these feelings, at some time, and you are so passionate, and so I also understand that part. So it's something that you build over time, the patience, the open-mindedness, try to see different point of views, and also try to be objective. But yeah, it's not something that comes like from day one. You have to experience, you have to make mistakes, you have to say sorry, and then learn from what you did.
Oh, that's a great answer. I love that. One of the things I remember from my time at ESLint, there was a lot of times where somebody would ask for a specific feature or a rule that was very niche. Like, I could totally understand their use case for it, but it didn't feel like something that was broadly applicable across a lot of projects. And ESLint had a nice answer for that of, sorry, we're not going to put this into our core, but you're welcome to write a custom rule. You're welcome to write a plugin. Is that something? You've mentioned custom rules, and I think I saw a discussion about that in your discussion board. Is a plugin like ecosystem something you've thought about? How does that sort of work in terms of you're written in Rust? I don't know what a plugin ecosystem looks like for Rust. If there's the ability to sort of create JavaScript or like a DSL around that. Can you sort of talk a little bit about your thoughts around plugins versus having everything in core?
So this is a request that has been asked a lot by a lot of people, new custom rules, can we create our rules? And fortunately, I have to say no, because at the moment it's not possible, even though we are thinking about it. Not like now, because there's a lot of going on, but also in the past, we actually explored a way to create new roles. And I think like one of my ex-colleagues actually created a POC that was a kind of really curious. Let me see if I can pull it off somehow. So I need to use the other, just a second. Okay, so let's see if it's still here. Yes. So this is a POC, but essentially it's a way to
Emma, would you mind zooming in on the text just a little bit so that our viewers can read it on smaller screens? Thank you.
No worries. I want that. So this is a way to use this thing called IDL. So it's a code-generated thing where essentially we create a lot of IDL for V8. It's all auto-generated by the code gen that we have. I don't understand very much what has been done because it was done by this colleague of mine, quite intelligent and clever, way more than me. And we were leveraging V8 to expose our internal APIs that you can actually see here. Let me see if that's the thing. So this is like a POC where you could actually create a rule that changes, it applies a mutation to this function. And this JS patch mutation is actually an API that we have in Rust, in the Rust code. So our code generation was creating a mirror of the Rust APIs into JavaScript using a mix of handwritten code and code-generated code. And so this is the auto-generated, as you can see. So it's a way to tell to V8 how to map these types. So, and in this POC, there was essentially a code mod written in Rust, where essentially it reads the JavaScript code at runtime. Okay, so while you execute the actual CLI, and applies. See that you have the load script, where essentially you read from the file system the code that we saw before, and it executes it inside Rust, and then you will have your diagnostic. So it's something that we explored. I tried to actually use it a few months ago. It's still here. I'm gonna try to port it to Biome and see how it goes. So it's a way that actually we had never seen in this kind of tools like TurboPack or SWC. So it's not also it's a kind of well, it's not the DSL, but it leverages V8. So we use actually the V8 crate somewhere. Let's see, it should be here. Yeah, so that's the V8 crate that the Dino guys actually created. So so that's the one idea. We don't know yet if it's going to work out or not, but I don't know. I want to see and try it if it works, but still there's a lot of prototyping. The other solution that I actually want to explore is the solution that ESLint is exploring, which is using DSL. So there's this tool called Trustful, which is a Rust project where essentially you create your DSL, you create essentially all the mappings into Rust, and that's essentially it. Thing is, you have to learn a new language. But I think learning new language is not a barrier. What is a barrier is actually the documentation. So if you write a really good documentation, I think users can pick up hack and eventually create new code and master it. This new code. That's what my opinion and my favorite, what I saw when I saw the contributions. Also in Rust internally, where when you write a rule, you don't write much Rust because it's all self-contained, and you just use the APIs that you have. And if you document them well and you show a lot of examples and you provide help for like some edge cases or some niche syntax, because you don't know much Rust, and I think that's helpful. So those are my ideas to create new custom rules. And the third one was okay, you write your rule in Rust. And this will be actually the less, the more straightforward way to actually provide the feature. But we are a tool for the JS and the web world, and so force users to use a language that is not JavaScript, TypeScript. It can hurt the actual project.
Well, this all sounds very exciting. Are there any particular ways that folks can contribute most usefully to Biome today?
I think lint rules are a really good place to start with, because as I said before, they are self-contained files where you don't need to worry about some other tools or diagnostics or anything. It's all baked in there. You just need to open a new rule and see how they do it. And then it's just a matter of using the IntelliSense and pick up the right methods and read our guide. So we have a really well-written guide where someone can go there. Do you mind
pulling that up just real quick so people can see sort of what that looks like, where to go? And also if there's maybe a list of rules that you want to add, if you can sort of pull that up and show people where to go if they want to, find a rule to start building on.
So let's see. The guide should be under analyze. There you go. So, and nope, in the JS analyze also. Actually, sorry about that. This is ROM tools. it's not.
How often does that happen when you mix up which repository you're looking in?
All the time. So let's follow the links. So there should be a contributing document. All right. So and we should go on the bottom. Yes. Okay. The documentation page. Okay. So they'll all link. Then we should go. See, that's what happens when you go to do the fork. You have a lot of things that you have to do, and oh gosh. So why? Yes, it was the contributing MD. All right. Okay. So that's our introduction on, where we put the roles. So roles are inside different folders based on if you need to use the semantic model, if you just need the AST, if there are rules for the accessibility, these are assist that we don't need to know anything about that for now. How to choose a name. So we have some naming condition. So you just need to read this and how the name of the rule is going to be. We have a command to create a rule from scratch. So we have a script with some boilerplate. You just need to give the name of the rule, the path, and you're good to go. Then we explain, okay, how I write my rule. So we have the query, and you have to choose if you want the AST, if you want the semantic analyzer, or semantic services that give a different kind of lookups and information. If you want to use the control flow graph. So as you can see, rules can use one tool or query at a time. So if you want a rule that uses a semantic model and the control flow graph at the same time, you can't. So this is actually, I know that in ESLint you can use both at the same time. So it's actually a barrier for us. But we haven't had problems so far. So far, so good.
Could you, could you describe what it means for something to be semantic? Like, what is the semantic model and what is the control flow graph in this context?
Yeah, so the semantic model is essentially for example, we have rules around React. Okay, so and you want to create a rule that says that I don't know, you don't use the function react.useClass. I don't know, something that is deprecated. So you need to use the semantic model to understand if the React binding is actually belongs from the import module of React or not. So in this case, you need to use the semantic model because it gives you this kind of information. If you use just an AST, it wouldn't be able to give you this proper information, or any kind of things that require understanding if the binding is global or not, or if it's being overridden by the user. So it requires understanding how the semantics of JavaScript work. The control flow graph, it's essentially how the code paths of the control flow graph. We should have a nice representation of the control flow graph if it works. So we have a playground. I show you a bunch of stuff. So if we create an if block, let's see. We actually have the control flow graph here, and it actually comes from actually Rust. So we build this control flow graph where you have jumps, blocks. I don't know, you might have also a try catch. So and you see how it gets updated. You essentially see the flow of the information inside this code. Maybe you can also have a return here, and it changes. So it's essentially what you get when you use this kind of query. So you have different APIs. You have to query all the blocks. Each block is going to have its node. So it's a completely different query system. So
that visualizer is beautiful. I am immediately desiring that for work on ESLint and TypeScript ESLint. But you bring up something interesting here. You've got React-specific rules, but Biome is not itself a React-specific project. Do you foresee splitting out React and plug in alongside, say, Solid, Preact, and so on at some future point?
Actually, I think with a different approach. Someone, next colleague, proposed having inside the configuration something like frameworks or libraries. So you put, like, in your framework, you put all the libraries that your project uses, and Biome automatically recommends you all the rules for those libraries. So if you use React, it's going to recommend you all the rules around JSX and React. And you can also add, I don't know, any framework that we might want to support, and you get all these rules baked in. So that's one of the idea, to actually have rules that help you with your framework and with your project.
That's another thing that sounds like it would be incredibly useful. One of the big benefits of the ESLint ecosystem has been having all those different frameworks, but one of the drawbacks then is you have to choose which, ESLint plugin React hooks, Solid, and so on. You gotta choose for your project.
Yeah.
Well, this looks great. Is there a list of rules that people can jump in and start working on?
Yes, I think we do. So Victorian actually created this umbrella with a list of rules that we want to borrow or emulate from different sources. So there are a bunch of them. So someone can come here and pick up one of these rules or propose also new ones, and there you go. So it's at least, as you can see, it's a very big. Some of the rules, as you can see, we have them. So we also have the React hook plugins. You just need, they are not recommended yet. So they are still in the nursery group. We have this group called the nursery where developers can create rules without problems, because we mark nursery rules as in development. So they're experimental. And if you want to use them, you have to opt in. And if we break them, it's totally your fault. So we are honest upfront. They are rules that we might deprecate or remove from one release to another. So it's a really good way for us to keep, we don't need to actually create a perfect rule at first shot. So we can just start with the basic rule and then over time making it better until we decide it's ready to be promoted. So yeah, a contributor can come here, and if they see if there's a no, I think this we have it. So I mean, we should check, but there are some rules that we don't, and if a contributor wants to give a stub, that's it.
And maybe it's a good idea for those of you thinking about doing this to raise your hand and say, hey, I'm going to work on this rule. Is there anything I should know about or whatever? Just keep other people from working on it at the same time, because that's never fun when you've duplicated.
Yeah. So. It's usually good to open an issue because it's also a way to ask questions. So if you have you can use also Discord, but if you don't use it, GitHub is the way. So just ask questions, and the core team is actually happy to guide you to answer all the questions and doubts, because some roles have a configuration and things like that. So things might get complex, or do we want to support the configuration? So there's always doubts and uncertainty. So yeah. GitHub, we usually use GitHub to keep the conversation.
So can you talk a little bit about Biome's philosophy when it comes to formatting? I think I was on the ESLint team when Prettier was released, and it was a little bit of why would someone else create a project like this? ESLint can do all the formatting you need. And there was a little bit of consternation there, but then we realized that kind of the superpower of Prettier is that you don't have to go in and configure all of the style rules and everything you care about to make it look some standard way, right? The way it actually looks isn't as important as it just does the thing quickly and simply. What is Biome's take on that? And maybe you can talk just a little bit about sort of the philosophy of your formatter.
So Biome's formatter was born as a drop-in replacement for Prettier. So the idea is to support Prettier's configuration and the same formatting. So, and why essentially adoption? The majority of Prettier is the de facto formatter of the web. Nobody's gonna beat him. No, it's the most used formatter used in the web projects, and that was the idea essentially. So let's essentially use the same engine, the same rules for formatting the code as Prettier. So the philosophy is the same. So try to provide less options as possible, and to reduce discussion and backchatting, because the idea is essentially having one code style for the code base, and that's it. So, but yeah, it comes with a baggage, because everyone has their own opinion. So eventually, actually, we already started to have some requests, this formatting is not that great. Can we change it? I also have an opinion, I don't like, for example, how Prettier and Biome, as a consequence, formats the ternary, because the way I read the ternaries in my head are different. So I prefer having a different way to see it, but that's how it was launched. And I think we're going to stick with that for the time being, because the format is actually really stable. It went on like 3 rewrites to get it right. Like, not sure if you know it, but I think the formatter is one of the most complex software in the wild. Like, creating a formatter is actually quite complex. Like, parser, okay, but formatter, and you know why? Because there's no knowledge base on the internet. Like, you can find tons of books around parsing, compiling, traversing AST, pre-order, post-order, so all these kinds of things. But writing a formatter, there's really like little knowledge on the web. So you have to essentially do it yourself. There's a nice article of the guy that wrote the Dart formatter. Myself and my colleague read it a few months ago, and he said it's actually this, like, it's quite complex to get it right, to rewrite it from scratch like more than once to eventually have something decent, fast, and predictable. And that's what it happened with Biome, and it's quite complex. I think that's the article. Thanks.
Can you pull that up for the people watching, just so they can see what you're talking about?
Yes, that's the article. Okay. Yeah. So give it a read if you like. It's quite insightful. If you don't know it, like, Prettier is actually based on a paper. So it's a grad paper. So it's really theoric. There's a lot of theory behind it, just pseudocode. So that's why it's quite difficult. And because of the fact that we wanted to emulate Prettier's logic, it was quite difficult to understand what was in there, because there are almost no comments, and there are a lot of edge cases, and there are also a lot of recursions, things that we try to avoid as much as we can, because like recursions are quite like dangerous. They put a lot of memory pressure on big files. So if we can, we want to try to avoid recursion. So it was complex, but eventually we pulled it off. We also have actually in our playground, we can actually see. Okay, let's see if we can remove something from here. Give me a sec. Okay, so as you can see in our playground, since we wanted to emulate Prettier, we actually have both of them. So a contributor or a user could actually give us the playground and tell, listen, look, this is actually different. This is a bug. Can you fix it? So our philosophy is actually reflected also on our website. We also have the IR, So our IR and for Prettiers, as you can see, they are very, very, IR. They're very similar.
Sorry, what is IR?
Intermediate representation. Intermediate representation. So it's essentially like an AST, but like for the formatter. So that's how essentially we translate. That's how essentially before we print the actual code, we parse, we go through the AST, and we create this IR. So it's a data structure that has a meaning for another piece of software called printer. So we give this to our printer, and the printer starts to understand this IR. So we can call it also dedicated AST. I don't know, but that's the technical name that usually you give to these kind of data structures, and that's it. So it's quite, that's how Prettier is and how a formatter is under the hood. So you serve the AST, you create a new data structure out of this AST, and then you give it to the printer, which understands all these symbols and whatnot, and it starts essentially creating a string out of it based on what we have here.
That is really cool, and I have to say I'm really impressed with your tooling, your playground here. It's obvious that a lot of thought and effort went into creating this, and I can only imagine that it's a great help for not only you but also contributors or other people coming to the project to sort of see how things work and figure out if it's just their local environment isn't set up right, so they're seeing something weird, like they can come here and get a source of truth. And I think that was probably time well spent building all this out. I'm very impressed.
Yeah. Like I use this all the time. Also, if you're creating a role and you want to have a grasp of the AST, you come here and look. You click on return, and you actually we actually highlight where in the AST you are. So if you're here and you need to, I don't know, go to your parent, you actually call ancestors in the Rust code, and eventually you know that you get this type, so you can try do a cast or something like that, and see if you actually find the node that you needed. So yeah, it's a really useful tools also for us as a developers. Like I wouldn't be able to create a role without this guy. It's really important. Sure. Yeah.
That's great. Well, I know we've gone over, and I really appreciate your time here. Before we go, I do want to ask, is there a way that people can either support you or support the project? Are you accepting contributions in your sponsorship on GitHub, or is there another way to support what you're doing here, this work?
Well, so we are setting up an open collective. It's already created, but like we want to make it fancy and with some decent description. So eventually we're gonna roll out sponsorships, so we can actually pay like resources like hosting, contributors, services that we need to actually run the project, and also like help us creating new features. This I think is the most important contributions. Essentially, your time, money, yes, but if you give us your time is actually more important. It has more value. If you don't know it, like what to do, we prepare also some good first issue. So you just go there, you have your labels. So we have a bunch of them, not many, but mostly, as you can see, they are rules. So we're gonna add them with it while the time passes, and yeah, that's it. So for now, that's how people can contribute. But we are working on making things better. Like I plan also like to create Discord roles, like helping us with triaging issues or helping other users that are facing issue, helping us with the documentation or the website. Like if there's someone out there that wants to take charge of the website, please be my guest. Like it will really be grateful. We use Astro, so it shouldn't be that difficult to use. And yeah, because I'm not that great at websites. Like I was a front-end engineer, but if I have all the resources and the design and things like that, if you have to create fantasies, I'm not that good.
That's fair. Do you have a Twitter/X account that people should follow, or what's the best way for people to stay engaged and find out what's going on, or get in touch with you with any questions? You mentioned the Discord. We can throw a link to that in the description of the video. Is there any other ways that we should mention that people can get in contact
Discord.
with the
I have my Twitter account, so
yeah, we can put that in the description as well. That'd be great.
Yeah, and also the Biome account. So yeah, so that's essentially my channels. I also have my email and my GitHub account, my Mastodon. So it's all there in my GitHub account. They're in the open. So
great. Well, Emma, thank you so much for joining us and for your time walking us through Biome and what it's like to maintain it, giving us some of the history and some of the decisions behind why it is the way it is. So thank you so much. And thank you, Josh, for joining us as well. I think you're now officially a friend of the podcast. You've been here a couple of times now, so thanks so much.
Thrilling. But no, this was a lovely chat, and I've been taking notes on things to file as feature requests on our end. You've got a lot of great stuff going there. Congratulations on getting such a wonderful project going, really.
Thank you guys for inviting me. It was really a great time to share my experience. Also insightful questions. So thank you again, Ian, and thank you, Josh, and thank you, Dimitri.
We can cut this out too if we need to.
Editor cuts.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about